Finally, college football is back. I'm Alex D, and with me is James Dotson. And since we live in Western PA, we are going to be covering the two local teams in Pitt and Penn State. James, what's up?
Not too much, Alex. How you doing?
I'm doing well. All right, let's get into Penn State first. How do you feel about the team this year?
I'm liking what I'm seeing. I'm liking what I'm hearing out here in Happy Valley. We're solid at every position. You got Silas Red and hopefully Stephon Green back. You have a nice, colorful red-green backfield. You have hardy targets like Derek Moy out at wide receiver and Curtis Drake and many cats out there to be receiving the ball. But the problem is, who's going to be throwing it to these guys? Is it going to be Rob Bolden or is it going to be Matt McGloin? And right now, according to Joe Paterno, there is no answer. It's both of them. And I think that's the big storyline going into the 2011 season here for Penn State.
All right, we'll get into the quarterback situation here in a minute. But so in terms of the standings, where do you think this team finishes?
Again, like almost every big team nowadays, they have a relatively easy non-conference schedule, except for the fact that they have Alabama as their second game of the year. Alabama currently ranked number 2 in the nation, and many people's prediction to make it to the championship game this year. So that makes it very difficult for the beginning, especially when we don't know whether it's Bolden or McGloin at QB. As for the Big Ten season, in the first years of the leaders versus legends, Penn State can easily finish in top 3 in the leaders division. I definitely see them ahead of Purdue, Indiana, and Illinois. The top 3 will be Ohio State, Penn State, and Wisconsin. I think that Penn State will actually finish second, tied with Ohio State in the leaders division behind Wisconsin. I look at Penn State having a conference record of about 5-3, maybe 6-2, with their losses coming at Wisconsin, and probably they always struggle at Northwestern. I hate to say that'd be the one, but probably Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Northwestern are the games I really look for them to struggle, and I look for a big home win against Nebraska on senior night in November 12th.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of every season, a fan goes to their favorite team's schedule and pencils in their losses, what games they think they'll win. When I look at Penn State's schedule, I see them losing to Iowa, Alabama, Nebraska. Usually I would say Ohio State, but they're not as powerful as they usually are. They could struggle against Illinois. So I see this team possibly going around 8-4, 7-5, kind of like how it was last year a little bit. The thing is, if the quarterback situation gets settled, I think they might be able to win a few of those swing games. I don't think they're going to beat Alabama, though. But, I mean, 9 wins, maybe 10 wins is not out of the reach for this team. Just when you go through the schedule, those are just the games that stick out to me as potential losses.
Yeah, well, Alabama is a pretty obvious pick early for them to struggle, and especially when we don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback, that just makes it even more difficult. You said it right there with Iowa, though, that always Iowa seems to have Penn State's number. So keep an eye on that. You're exactly right. I think that they are a great matchup, though, against Nebraska. I think Nebraska will not be able to have a defense that can last a whole year, and their offense just isn't going to stack up against Big Ten defense, which Penn State has probably the best defense, in my mind, in the Big Ten right now, with players like Michael Mackey in the linebacking core, Jack Crawford on the defensive line, Nick Suke and Astorino solid up in the secondary. I just think you have a very solid defense, and that's what's going to make Penn State the big force, if they are to become one, is how their defense plays, because we don't know what we're going to get from the offense, and that's just what you have when you don't know who your quarterback's going to be, because that's what starts every play. But, I mean, in terms of the Big Ten Conference, if they can get by Iowa and get past their trap game that they always have at Northwestern, they can easily be going into the last 3 games of the year 5-0 in the conference. But then you got to end the year hosting Nebraska, at Ohio State, at Wisconsin. Honestly, as a realist here, if they can win 1 out of those 3 games, I'd consider that a win. You'd finish 6-2 in the conference, and you'd be in shape for a January 1st bowl bid. And considering all the question marks that they have right now, I think that would be an absolutely a great year for them.
Hmm. Another thing we're going to talk about is the quarterback situation, like I said earlier. James, I know you have a pretty interesting perspective on this that most fans probably won't. What do you think about the quarterback situation?
Well, in terms of watching him last year, Rob Bolden started from the beginning. He took a few games to get warmed up. He finally got his best performance when he played Minnesota. And then he got his concussion and pretty much was out the rest of the year, or was behind McGloin the rest of the year. McGloin had some great games against some mediocre defenses, but he still performed in bigger games, and that includes Michigan, a big comeback against Northwestern, and even the first half of the Ohio State game. He performed well. And then his obvious 5-interception debacle at Florida. So either way, you're looking at a quarterback who has issues, and you're going to have that. And I have never in my life been a fan of a two-quarterback system, never, because I feel that a quarterback can't get into a groove and the receivers aren't able to focus or aren't able to know what to expect when you have one quarterback for one series or one play and then another guy coming in for the next. But for some reason, I like the idea here of having Bolden and McGloin splitting time, whether it be a series at a time or a few plays at a time. And my thinking for it is just the fact that they are two very different styles of quarterback, but they also are similar enough that it won't make a big difference. The one time in history that I've seen in college the two-quarterback system really work was with Ohio State in 2008 with Terrell Pryor's freshman year. And I look at the first game that they really did a two-quarterback system, him and Todd Beckman. And what they did was they literally alternated every other play for the first couple series against USC. But Terrell Pryor being the runner and Todd Beckman being the more pure passer, what they did was the first play, Pryor was in there, and they ran a play action and he threw a pass for first down. Next play, Beckman's in there, and he runs the option. So you can be able to use these quarterbacks not only to their strengths, but to what is the supposed weakness. And the thing about Bolden is that he's not only a good runner, but he does have a good arm. He does throw a good ball. And the thing about McGloin, the pure passer, is I'll tell you what, I saw a couple of runs and scrambles out of him that would have made Terrell Pryor jealous. So to me, I think that you would be able to use a two-quarterback system. And when they are that similar, that you're not going to have a running guy for one play and then someone who is going to throw it to you the next play as a wide receiver, you're not worried about whether you're going to get the ball in this play or not. You can expect it any time. So I think that their differences are big enough that it is a benefit for the team, but they're not so severe that it becomes a detriment to your offense.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I guess how I feel about that is that kind of a dual quarterback system, you got to make sure it's executed perfectly, and it's kind of hard to do. More times than not, I would probably say it's not as successful. I know it worked at Ohio State. Maybe in this situation it will. I think I would have, though, Rob Bolden start the season. I'll tell you why. The first few games, they go up against Alabama, Iowa, and a few other teams that Rob Bolden already played. He went 4-3 in his 7 games as a starter. I know he didn't beat Alabama. I know he didn't beat Illinois. But the thing is, though, he has experience against those teams. And unfortunately, Matt McGloin ended the season on a very, very bad note. When Rob Bolden got his concussion in that game against Minnesota, he was playing well. So I'm starting to think he might have found his groove a little bit. So to start it out, I would say Rob Bolden. If things don't work out, then throw in McGloin. Just I think just the experience factor of him already playing those teams is very helpful. Considering McGloin, I think McGloin would be very, very overwhelmed against an Alabama team.
I think so too, but I also saw something that I never saw out of Rob Bolden. And this was in the Michigan game, his first start as a former walk-on. There was a 4th and 5, I think it was, early in the game. They were either tied or they were down 7. And the kicking team came on, and McGloin literally looked at him and said no, was shooing him off the field, And the coaches and the kicker had absolutely no choice but to listen to him. They said, okay, and they went right back off. He led them to a first down and to a touchdown and about 5 more touchdowns throughout that game in a high-scoring game that you needed to have when you're playing Denard Robinson in Michigan. So to me, it was that leadership that I saw and the way the team came together when McGloin was under center. That was something I never saw in the early games, whether it was against Youngstown State last year or against Alabama, whether it was a 1AA opponent or whether it was the number 1 team in the country.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess it's another reason why I was also thinking Rob Bolden should be the starter. I think he's the future of the team. McGloin, I think, only has a year or so left. But Bolden has a potential good 3 years unless he gets redshirted. But, I mean, if you want to win now, maybe McGloin is the way to go. Maybe it's Bolden. I just feel like it's such a toss-up. I'm just giving Bolden the slight nod. It's not like I'm going out there promoting Bolden with all this pride, because I know you might be right about McGloin, although I don't think I don't agree with you on the dual quarterback system. But if they get this quarterback situation going in the right direction, like I said, they might get 9 or 10 wins. Who knows?
If they haven't made a decision by now, it's because they honestly don't know they are that equal. And to me, when they've both done reps with the first team, it's not like one's behind in that regard, that you can use it to your advantage. And I think you can really throw off a great defensive mind, even Nick Saban, by doing something that you're just not expecting. So we'll see what happens. I'm hopeful for an 8-win season. Could they reach double digits? Could they make it to the Big Ten championship game? Yeah, definitely. I'm not holding my breath, but I think they have a good chance, and all we can do is go one game at a time and see what happens.
Well, I think that one thing that's pretty indicative of how close this quarterback competition is when they released the official depth chart, and you saw Rob Bolden or Matt McGloin as the number one at the number 1 slot for quarterback. I never seen anything like that before. But let's talk about Pitt here. How do you see Pitt finishing this year, Jimmy?
Well, Alex, I might be in the very much minority in this one, but I have Pitt winning the Big East and going to a BCS game. I look at them ending with a 9-3 record, but it's not going to come easy. I actually have them starting off with a 2-2 record that they'll beat Buffalo and Maine. If we don't beat Buffalo and Maine, then I think we got some big issues here. But I see them struggling at Iowa. It's tough to play down there in Kinnick Stadium. And then I see them in a tough, brutal matchup with Notre Dame, and I think Notre Dame just has a great team this year. The second year in the spread offense is going to be just enough to put them over to get above Pitt in their first year with the new offense. But once the Big East season begins, I think it is a great setup for them for Pitt. The only trap game that I see is actually at Rutgers. There's something about Rutgers that I always see that they don't play well against them. And especially being out at Rutgers instead of playing at Heinz Field, I don't like it. And then, of course, we have the big game of the year, the one that will decide the Big East Championship, and that is the November 25th Friday game at West Virginia. And I have Pitt winning this one, and I mean, it's going to be a battle no matter what. Heated rivalry, new coaches, new styles of offense, and I give the nudge in Pitt because of some of the leadership that they have on the team with a Tino Sinceri, with a Ray Graham, to be able to pull this off, plus the fact that from what I've seen from Todd Graham's offense, the fact that they have so many weapons that they can use, so many different guys who are touching the ball, and I think with the guys who he has brought in here to Pitt, including the transfer from Wisconsin, that you're going to be able to get this variety so much that it's going to work out to Pitt's favor, and you're going to be able to wear down any defense, especially West Virginia's very porous defense. So I see them at a 9-3 finish, 6-1 in the conference, and heading to the BCS. What do you think?
I'm going to have to disagree with you there almost entirely, because the thing is, they lost their 2 biggest weapons in Dion Lewis and Jonathan Baldwin. They're transitioning to a radical new style of play with Todd Graham's up-tempo, no-huddle offense, spread offense, that's a no-huddle offense, and I'm just not sure how, a program with a first-year head coach and doing all these dramatic changes while losing some big starters can be projected to go to a BCS game. Now, I know, yes, they're in the Big East, and that probably has mostly, that basically has everything to do with it. But the thing is, I just don't think they're going to have the conference record that you think. I think they will lose to Iowa. I think they'll lose to Notre Dame, and I think they'll lose to Utah. I also think they'll lose to South Florida, and not because I think South Florida is that much better, because it's just because Pitt never wins Thursday games, ever. And I have them losing the backyard brawl, and they could potentially lose the Rutgers game. So I can see them finishing 7-5 or 6-6. Who knows? Maybe at that record they will get into the BCS because the Big East is that putrid. But I just don't see it. Tino Sinceri, he's going to be doing a lot more running than expected. A lot of people who followed Sinceri in high school say that this style of play actually fits him better. I don't know that. I didn't really watch him that much in high school. Another thing is, it's hard for me just to get a kind of a taste of Todd Graham's offense. I never saw any of the Tulsa games. They're not televised around here. And when you try and look them up on YouTube or anything, barely anything comes up. So I just think it's a lot of factors. I do think eventually Todd Graham will have this program winning the Big East. But just this year in particular, I see them having a winning season, 6-6, 7-5, which is not too bad for a new head coach, but I just don't see a Big East championship. I actually have, fortunately, this pains me to say, West Virginia winning the Big East.
Well, everything that you're saying is definitely right on. That's for sure. There are a lot of question marks. I think what'll keep them in the games, especially early when they're adapting to this new offense, is going to be, for sure, though, is going to be they still have one of the top defenses in the country. Last year, they were 15th in points against for their defense, averaging less than 20 points allowed per game. That's unbelievable, especially in this day and age.
Well,
go ahead.
If it's all right if I cut you off, well, here's the thing with that. They do have a lot of talent on the defensive end. I was stating how the offense is changing, but the defense is changing dramatically too. Yes, they're changing to just a 3-4, but it's a dramatic style of play. They're going to be taking a lot of risks. Their team is built upon winning games by high margins, like 55 to 53. Their defense is going to be built on taking risks, trying to create turnovers, but expecting to give up a lot of points, a lot of touchdowns. That's the thing with Todd Graham. He's been successful everywhere he went, but he never had a great defense. The 1 year he finished 7-5. In his previous years, he was with Tulsa. That was his only subpar season as a head coach, and that was the season he was calling plays on both sides of the ball on his own. The offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator were not calling the plays, I believe. So. I don't know. I think the offense eventually will turn the click, but I think the defense, as much talent as it has, they're a defense built to kind of grind it out to the fourth quarter, and now they're asking to give up a lot of points and take a lot of chances and win by like 55 to 53. So that's how I look at it.
I don't think they'll be taking chances, and you said it though exactly. Now I'm going to make you realize it that Todd Graham has not had the type of defense and the quality of defense that Pitt currently has on its roster. And I think that's what's going to make this high-octane offense even better. Yeah, it's great if you can put up 50 points, but if you allow 70, you're not going to win. I think right now, even if you're only scoring 30 points a game with this offense, you still have a defense that's averaging only 20 allowed. So I think that's going to be a huge plus for Pitt. And, yeah, you also said that, we haven't had a chance to see many highlights from Tulsa. I just look at their stat page, and I'm just astonished, I guess is the best way to put it, at what I'm looking at. You have a quarterback in this high-octane spread, supposedly run-first offense, who threw for over 3,500 yards last year. But he also had more than twice as many carries as anybody else on the team, just about. And this quarterback that they had on there, G.J. Kinney, he had 3,650 passing yards, and he had 160 carries for 561 yards. The next highest rusher had 87 carries. and there are probably 6 or 7 names who got significant carries throughout the year, and I'm talking like averaging 4 or 5 plus carries per game. So you're going to see lots of people touching the ball, which is why I think Pitt will do well. You lose the playmakers in John Baldwin and Dion Lewis, but you still have 2 good running backs in Ray Graham and Zach Brown, plus a bunch of freshmen that I'm sure are going to get touches because they're going to be dynamic playmakers and game changers. So I can see good coming out of this.
Well, I mean, they definitely have the talent to eventually, on the offensive side of the ball, put up big numbers. I just feel like after this program's 6 years, and 4 years for this class, to be so indoctrinated of doing things completely opposite, despite having the talent to succeed in Todd Graham's offense, I just feel it's going to take some time, a little more time than 1 year to reach that Big East championship. I mean, I don't know. I hope I'm wrong because I love Pitt. I really do hope I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being too pessimistic. I don't know. But if a few things fall into place, if the quarterback situation turns out all right, they'll do well. Tino Sinceri is going to be under center 99% of the time, or in the shotgun formation, I should say 99% of the time. He's going to ask to run. He's going to be asked to start winging it all over the place too. Another thing is though, as much as Tino Sinceri, they're going to want him to throw, they're going to want to hand the ball off to Ray Graham a lot more, especially because they know the quarterback situation with Tino Sinceri he's probably going to take more time to develop. Ray Graham could surpass 2,000 yards, and I'm not even kidding that. Todd Graham even thinks that. But I think because they're going to be giving him the ball so much more and the talent that Ray Graham has, he could excel if things fall into place. I watched him personally. He almost got 1,000 yards last year. He put up about, I think it was 8 touchdowns, maybe even more. And that was as Dion Lewis's backup. So if he can carry the rock all over the side of the field like he's supposed to do, if he can stay healthy, and if he learns Todd Graham's offense to the very point of it, then they can be successful, despite the fact that Tino Sinceri might be a little underdeveloped at the position. Now, if Tino does develop well and does succeed, and Ray Graham succeeds, then I can see them winning a Big East championship. So, I mean, that's the way I look. I just feel like, I guess overall, it's potential to be very great and potential to be very bad this season for Pitt. So maybe that's the way I'm looking at it.
Well, that about wraps everything up here for this episode of the 360 Sports Network. We hope you guys will enjoy the beginning of college football season. As speaking for my partner Alex here, I believe we both agree that this is one of the best times of the year, and Saturdays around Pennsylvania, around the Commonwealth, are just lots of fun to just sit down on your couch and watch some Pitt and Penn State football, and not playing each other yet, but give it a few more years and we'll get there. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.